This is the control tower. Make a left turn. Over.
What's up and welcome back. So it's Friday night, driving down to Philly tomorrow to go to Too Many Games. I'm really excited to go see what it's all about and just check out, all the panels and the music acts and just kind of see what it's going to be like just to be surrounded by all these gamers and stuff like that. I'm definitely very psyched to go check it out. So I'm kind of celebrating tonight with little Stella, just chilling, getting my playlist ready for the drive down. But in the meantime, I say we go check out my review of Galactic Attack for the Sega Saturn. Cheers. Galactic Attack was published in the United States by Acclaim in 1995 for the Sega Saturn as a Saturn exclusive. And that's really when American audiences were introduced to this game, otherwise known as RayForce. Now, RayForce is the name of the Japanese arcade game that was originally released in 1994 by Taito. However, when the game was released on the Japanese Saturn, it was called Layer Section. And then, in a miraculous effort to confuse the shit out of everybody, when it was released in European arcades, it was called GunLock, and then it was released on the Saturn, they called it Galactic Attack as well. Why, you might ask? Licensing! Whee! Lawyers. Now, as you can see, this game does have a menu here where you can make some adjustments, you can listen to the sound. Now, what's interesting about this game is that while it defaults to normal, there is no easy setting, and the game only gets harder. So there are 5 hard difficulty settings. I can't even imagine how difficult those must be because the game already gets pretty ridiculous on normal setting. So one of the things that you can change here is the game mode. So you can do the Saturn mode or the arcade mode. And what the arcade mode is essentially, I guess you would call it the Tate mode, where you flip your monitor vertical and you can play it that way. So the plot of this game is kind of non-existent, but it's in the manual, so you might as well discuss it. Basically, it's sort of like this Terminator scenario where civilization created this, network computer that basically took over everything and decided not to be operated by humans anymore, decided we needed to be wiped out. So we are essentially the resistance. Not terribly creative, but whatever, it gets the job done. Now on to the graphics. I don't know, I think this game looks pretty good. What do you guys think? It's a great 2D pixel-based shooter. It's completely pixel-based. At first when you turn the game on, it's not really all that impressive, but once you get later on into the levels, they start doing some cool 2D effects with scaling and rotation and stuff like that. At some point where you're actually thinking, wait a minute, maybe they actually did some 3D, but it's just really good scaling. And it just makes you kind of remember how awesome these arcade games were, and they used to have the ability to just blow your mind. I would say perhaps some of the animations and the characters and the ships and all that stuff could probably be done a little bit better, but I think the further you get into the game, the better everything looks. The stages, there's more lasers and stuff being flown at you, and there's like characters in the background, like way further into the background that you think you can actually shoot, but due to that laser lock on, there's just some really cool moments where you get to take down like ships and kind of relive like your Macross moments that you used to watch in cartoons. It's just a very cool looking game. Overall, I think the sound in this game is really solid. I'll address the music first because I think the music is actually kind of the weak point in this game, at least in my opinion. The music was composed by a very respected composer, Tamayo Kawamoto. I hope I'm not butchering that name too badly. I think she started out as a composer with Capcom in the 80s and, did some really memorable stuff doing like Ghouls and Ghosts in the arcades, Legendary Wings, Forgotten Worlds, games that I played, enjoyed the hell out of, and I definitely remember the music from some of those games. But here, unfortunately, the score for Galactic Attack or RayForce, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, it just feels a little hollow. Really kind of what I'm looking for when I'm playing a shooter like this, while it might sound a little cliche, is just something really heart-pumping, action-y, something that's really just going to keep me locked in on that screen and just sort of like amp up the tension. And this game just didn't really have any of that. It just, like I said, it kind of just felt hollow. didn't really grab me and hold my attention. Now, the sound effects in this game are really cool. I would definitely say that they're better than the music. They're not, technical marvels. They're not super outstanding. There's better sounding games, I'm sure. However, this game has that, arcade punch that I really like in my shooters. And Taito was like the king of that when they were making arcade games I used to play all the time. But overall, between the music and the sound effects, I would say, this is a very solid package. Now, obviously, when you're playing a game like this, a vertical shooter, even a horizontal shooter, the crux of the whole thing is the gameplay. How well does it play? How do the mechanics work? Does everything work well? And does everything work in conjunction with one another? And this game absolutely does. As you can see, this game has a sort of a lock-on mechanic, kind of like you would see in Xevious, except the whole thing is it's more like Panzer Dragoon. Because as you can see, the reticle actually is a lock-on tool, and it fires out lasers similar to Panzer Dragoon or Omega Boost. And the nice thing about that feature is that the laser can also be upgraded, so you can lock onto more targets. And the way you upgrade are these red and yellow crystal-looking things that fly through the screen, and then these green pods. And the crystals that you collect are there to upgrade your kind of standard laser shot, but the green pods that float down actually upgrade how many lasers that you shoot at when you do your lock-on. Now, the other thing this game does a little bit different from other vertical shooters is that there's no nuclear option. There's no button to press a nuke bomb that blows up everything on the screen, which I thought was an interesting choice. I usually kind of enjoy that, but it was nice to have something a little bit different. Now, this game has 7 levels, and at the end of each level there is a boss. So it's pretty standard structure, but the game is definitely very difficult, and it has actually a pretty even difficulty curve, but the later levels are just brutal. It definitely becomes kind of a bullet hell game. Just tons and tons of bullets flying everywhere. It's almost impossible to get through, but it's not actually impossible, so it's definitely very, very difficult. I can't even imagine playing this game on a harder difficulty setting. So in direct relation to how difficult this game is, I had to confess that I had to use a cheat to get through this game. I just didn't have the time to commit to actually memorize all these levels to actually get through this game in order to do the review. And this game has very, very few cheats. The only cheat that comes standard on the disc is the ability to get 4 extra continues. And you're granted 4 continues, by default, so that's a total of 8 continues total. That is definitely a decent amount of lives. However, pretty sure I had to use more than that, and I actually used a cheat that was only available on a action replay card, which I have for my Saturn. And the standard one, not upgraded or updated, had a cheat in there for unlimited lives for both player 1 and player 2. So I definitely had to use that in order to get through this game. But I would be remiss if I did not mention there is a 2-player mode, so you can play simultaneously with somebody else. However, I just don't have anybody to play this game with, so I didn't really get to test that mode out. However, I'm sure the game would have been a little bit easier with a partner. Alright, so there you have it for Galactic Attack, another super solid shooter for the Saturn. And I have to actually add sort of a caveat. I didn't want to redo the voiceover, but I started listening to the soundtrack alone, like outside of the game, and it's actually a lot better than I was kind of like listening to it in the game. It just wasn't really kind of doing it for me, but for some reason I listened to it outside of the game and I actually enjoyed it a lot more. So, I don't know, go figure. So, a little bit higher marks for the soundtrack on this game. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I'll see you guys later.